We're here today with MorningStar Angeline. MorningStar is a queer Chippewa Cree, Blackfoot, Navajo, and Latinx actor, director, producer, writer, and musical performer. Had to make notes. She told me earlier, nothing about me is simple. It's all long-winded.
There's a lot of hyphens. There's a lot of...
I love that, though. Who wants to be simple? Simple is boring.
You can't just do one thing.
You might recognize MorningStar, at least from here to here. She was recently one of our models for our new Naja collection that just launched on April 15th. And we're so excited to have her here today because she's so busy. What are you doing?
I am currently, most importantly, shooting right now for Outer Range, which is an Amazon series. And within that, I play Sheriff Joy, who is one of the leads in that. I play her partner, her wife, the mother of her child. So we have a lot of family, and it's my first openly queer role that I've taken on. So
that's exciting.
That was nice, yeah.
I can't off the top of my head think of any other roles that are like that I've seen out there.
Especially on, television that is, going to be everywhere, something like Amazon or Netflix,
Right.
And it's contemporary. It's not a period piece. It's completely today.
I remember we were talking, I think it was the day of the photo shoot, and I was saying it's so nice to see a role for a Native woman that isn't just a sad story and a tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important that we have those narratives that tell that part of our history.
Yeah.
But it's not everything that we are. And there's so many stories like the one you're playing that need to be told.
Yeah. And I think there's also, as, a lot of Native talent collectively feel the weight of constantly doing heavy roles. Like, it does something to your psyche to be constantly,
in victim mode almost.
Yeah. Like, I've played 2 roles that have nearly committed suicide or did commit suicide. There's heavy topics, and it should be talked about, but I think there is something to just letting those stories that are based on those exist and focusing on those stories as well.
I think it's really important. And I, for one, was really excited when you told me about that role because it's doing that. It's filling in those gaps that are missing in our narratives.
Yeah. And it's not a very trauma-based story between, my character. It's more light. It's more just letting us exist.
Yeah.
And capturing that. And I think that's really great. Yeah.
Letting us exist.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, our narratives have been all about us being disappeared.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's important that we're shown in a contemporary, everyday context.
Yeah. Because
we are living, evolving, contemporary people.
Exactly.
Well, it was really fun getting to shoot you. It sounds so violent. Getting to photograph you a few weeks ago. We actually, MorningStar and I met almost a year ago, a little less. And I did some photos of her right down here in the Bosque, which is where we're at, actually. The Rio Grande is right behind us. And we were going to sit over there, but it's a little chilly today. We brought our blankies. It was really warm a week ago, and then it did an Albuquerque thing and became really cold.
Yeah.
But we're publicly distanced. We're about 6 feet apart. We've got our masks. I even have my... Oh, don't tell me I lost it. My passport.
Yep.
So I'm safe. So we're playing it safe out here. And I wanted to mention, especially when we're talking right now, we're going to probably talk about a lot of issues revolving around being an Indigenous woman in the space, in all the spaces. But along the lines of that, the jewelry that you were modeling for us for T.Skies, the Naja collection, which is an homage to the history of this iconic pendant that, you always see at the end of the squash blossom necklace. And that history is really rich. And it tells a lot of our story of colonization, but also of blending of cultures and how out of war came something really unique and beautiful. And the Naja was adopted from the Spanish, and the Spanish adopted it from the Moors. who had control over Spain for many years. So this symbol, which is actually a symbol of fertility and femininity, has had this huge travel through many cultures and ended up here in the Southwest, where our Dene silversmiths took it and made something beautiful out of it. But what's important to talk about also is that 5% of all of the najas that we're selling online at turquoiseskies.com, actually it's T.Skies.com, 5% of the profit is going towards a local nonprofit called the Changing Woman Initiative. And I'm going to read what they say about themselves because they word it so beautifully. So Changing Woman Initiative is a New Mexico-based 501c3 nonprofit. They have the mission to renew cultural birth knowledge to empower and reclaim indigenous sovereignty of women's medicine. And I love how that is worded, so I had to share that. But basically, they are an indigenous women's health organization. They provide midwives and clinics to the indigenous community here in New Mexico, and I believe they have some ties in Arizona as well. So we're really excited to be able to contribute back to the community in that way. It's part of our Mother's Day campaign, so we're honoring the indigenous women in our community and in our lives. So to kind of like dig a little bit deeper, thinking about indigenous women and the issues that we face, I'm sure that breaking into acting is a monumental task for anybody. But as a Native woman, I'm sure that there are so many more challenges involved. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that, and also how the space is changing with representation and inclusion, and how you fit into all of that.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're in the middle of a changing time right now, and I'm certainly in a much more privileged position than, say, actors, female, male, anything in between, acting in pertains of Native cinema, right? 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I think we're seeing a shift now for actual indigenous peoples who have ties to their communities to portray the roles that are being written. And I think that's an important conversation. It's like an ongoing dialogue. I think in terms of being a Native actor, it's a never-ending list of things that I think that we face. I think you can get pigeonholed into, you know, I can name actors who probably feel pigeonholed into westerns or period pieces, who only really get to play roles from that perspective. You know, as a Indigenous actor, I need to keep my hair long because Indigenous peoples don't exist without short hair, right? Like, so
I don't exist. My hair's too short.
It's this bizarre thing where, you know, I feel like I have to kind of maintain a certain level of a blank canvas, which is hard to do because I'm tattooed. You know, I'm not.
You're human.
I'm human.
You're a contemporary modern person.
And I like to explore, I guess, art, like even on my body, and things like that. So that has put a little bit of confinement on it. So I think I try to overcompensate with, okay, I'll keep my hair long, so that'll work. And I think it's constantly feeling like the work that I do as an actor needs to be hinged on my indigeneity or my culture. I can't just play a girl who's their love interest, but has nothing to do with her culture. She's just doing something, you know, maybe she goes on vacation, who knows?
Yeah.
Little weird, you know, little silly stories, I think heartfelt stories, but comedic things. We don't really get a chance to explore those things like we were talking about. Mm-hmm. So I think from every perspective, whether it's appearance to the type of work that we can actually do, is limiting. And I think that's what drew me to writing, directing, producing as a necessity more than feeling naturally drawn to it. more.
So you felt like you had to create the space
Yeah,
because the space didn't exist for you.
Yeah, and it was more also just seeing the people around me who are trying to do that too, and thinking, okay, is there a reason I'm not doing that? Is there a reason I'm not directing or writing? And I think ultimately it came down to me telling myself I didn't deserve to be in that space, as opposed to not being drawn to it. So once I distinguished those two things, it was like, okay, well, like, I'm a storyteller. I feel that in my bones. So why don't I explore that through other means?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel that 100%.
Yeah.
Storytellers.
Yeah, I mean, that's above everything. Like, people ask, is acting more important? It's like, just storytelling. As long as I'm helping a story come to life, serving a story in some way, embodying a story, then I'm fine.
I mean, so many times a week I pray and I say, Creator, just let me be a vessel to tell stories.
Yeah.
Just use me as your tool to tell the stories that need to be told. Ooh, it gets chilly out here.
I know, the little breeze sneaks up on you.
So going back to the long hair, it's a little bit ironic because one of your first big roles, you had short hair.
Mm-hmm. I had a very close friend of me had just passed away, and 3 months prior, I think, had just buzzed my head. I went in my bathroom and just shaved it. And at this point, I wasn't acting. I'd kind of given up on it. And then, as the universe would have it, I get an audition for a feature film. They like it. They were like, we like your hair that way. Because the role was also supposed to be very youthful, very young, and she's not too tied to her culture.
Yeah.
So I think they were like, that it works, you know. I didn't like it. I hated it. I was like, please put a wig on me or let me cut it. Because it was like that awkward, cut.
It's
not
almost
anything.
like a blessing in disguise, though, because that was one of your first roles, and it was so not like your typical native role. And I think that probably has served you well in allowing you to be cast for other, not your typical native roles, right?
Yeah. I've definitely, I think, you know, I've had the right projects come my way. There's a lot of rejection that comes within the industry, particularly with acting. And I think if you look at it from that perspective of the right stories will find me, then it feels less toxic and awful.
Yeah.
But if you remove the storytelling aspect of it, then it's just rejection and it's money and it's all of those things. But if it's like,
you're serving a higher purpose.
Yeah, what stories ultimately do I want to be a part of? What kind of things do I want to say?
Right.
And so,
and I have noticed that your roles are all very meaningful.
Yeah.
And I was hoping you could talk about that. When you go to choose a role, what are you looking for? I mean, how are you willing to be used as a tool, and how are you not willing to be used?
Well, first, with acting, actors have a lot of privilege once they surpass a certain status. And even then, they don't have a lot of power a lot of the time. So there isn't a lot of choice making until you get to a point where people start asking you and you're on demand and such. So it's a mixture of luck. I've just gotten lucky with the roles that have come my way have been not too problematic, and I felt like, you know, I could embody that and sleep at night, and that's a good representation of something or someone.
Yes.
It's only been recently that I've kind of had, you know, especially in terms of smaller indie projects, I can say yes or no. One of those projects was the incredible 25th year of Mitzi Bearclaw. And that project, you know, it's an indie film. It's a relatively small budget, shot in Canada. And that one, I had more of a driver's seat. Like, I could take it or leave it. And I think ultimately I didn't want to have deja vu with Drunktown's Finest of like, okay, a girl's coming back to her people and what that means to a young person. That, although it's the same premise, they're very different. And so that film, I think, was a good moment for me to say, what do I want to do with the character? I was able to have some agency, and that was just because, you know, I had a female Indigenous director, and I think she trusted me implicitly, and there was a lot of communication by non-verbal, you know, when you're just on the same page as someone.
Absolutely.
And you can go and say, is this okay? So I think that has played a role, but it's really only just blossoming that I feel like I have some control. And a lot of that is the directing and the writing and saying, potentially, do I want to write something for myself? I've been writing for my friends in terms of but I think it eventually comes to Indigenous actors, but it comes very slowly. So I think a big part of it is also just taking it and saying, yes, no, and the climate changing, again, going back to that, of now what I'm finding on productions is that they're looking for input more than ever from the actors. They're saying, does this feel appropriate to you?
Your role in Yellowstone as Samantha, I believe, had some of that, where you were able to go to the director.
Oh, yeah. I think, Taylor Sheridan is the writer-director of that, and he, as a non-Indigenous person, I felt on set was holding space for me, was making sure that I was taken care of while going through a scene that is about me committing suicide and abandoning my children, but why she did that, and he wanted her to remain human and not villainized because she was doing those things. And I think that's the best thing. That's the kind of director I want to be, is collaborative, of saying, how can we do this better? Do you have an idea? And also finding compromise. It's a dance,
Yes.
There's trust. There's a lot of trust that goes into it.
I just find it so inspiring and encouraging that those conversations are even being had on set. With something like Yellowstone was being shown on which network was it?
That one's on Paramount.
Paramount, yes. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge, and I think and I'm sure that those conversations are also happening with the project you're working on now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, now there's a real pressure to have proper consultants. By proper, I mean consultants that are actually being listened to, not just there to fulfill the quota or the role. They're actually being listened to, and there's changes that are happening, I think.
Can you talk a little bit about your role as a storyteller in regards to being a writer and a director?
Yeah. Well, I think I started arguably directing things as music videos. That was kind of my gateway into visual storytelling behind the camera. And in 2016, my stepfather had passed away, and I think it left me in this place where I knew I needed to exercise this grief out of me in a tangible storytelling way. And the way it came to me is that, grief is such an intense feeling. It sends you into worlds of hells and versions of yourself, and it's kind of like this rebirth of sorts. And I think when I was trying to write a story that encapsulated that, post-apocalyptic genre just seemed to serve it very well. In that when he died, it felt like I lost, yes, my father, yes, my best friend, but also a part of me, a part of my tie to my identity, my culture, my people, my home. And it felt like without him, I was unworthy to hold that space. And so that feeling of feeling like alone and in a world I don't recognize then became the post-apocalyptic scenario in what is now the short film Yá'át'ééh Abiní, which is basically just about a young Navajo female who is in the middle of an apocalyptic scenario where an unknown virus has hit and her father has just passed away from the virus, and he left her with all of his ceremonial items, all of his cultural pieces, all of that, and she's just alone. And over the next few days, she has to come to terms with whether or not she's going to take that medicine with her, or if she's going to kind of ban it from her life. And it ultimately came down to a very personal story. And then once I started writing that and sharing it with others, and they felt a tie to it, I started expanding on the other ideas of how, colonialism impacts, how all of these other things just started to be served through the aspect of this post-apocalyptic story. And I submitted it to the Sundance Indigenous Lab in 2018. I received the lab and then shot the film later that year. And it's, you know, it's gone on to gain a whole new meaning now because of the COVID pandemic.
It was almost like you were writing the future.
Yeah.
Which is spooky, I bet,
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, my producer Blackhorse, he texted me and he was like, it's kind of crazy how much your film is coming to life right now. And there was a period where, right when the pandemic hit, where it just sent me into a world of emotions, having predicted that. And ultimately, though, the film is about reconnecting to your foundation despite that loss. And so, you know, the way people are reacting to it now is just, it's humbling. Because as a storyteller, I think a lot of it is we're supposed to serve the story. It's not about us.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was more of a vessel for that story. So when people talk to me about it now, I almost feel like I know I wrote it, I know I created it, but part of it just feels like it wasn't me, and it serves me as if I didn't make it. Like it serves as a reminder for all the things that I lost. So it's like a love letter to me, and then also to the people who now, so many of us have lost people due to COVID and things beyond COVID, diabetes, you know, all of these other things. And so it's something that I don't fully grasp even.
Wow.
The impact of, I don't.
But that's incredible. It's incredible to think that you just, the timing of it, and that you were like there, like almost like the story was given to you in advance to share because the world was going to need it so desperately.
Yeah. I had a Q&A yesterday about the film, and it was, you know, it's a virtual event, and the woman who organized it was crying, I'm crying, everyone is crying, I'm just like, they were all good tears, and they're therapeutic tears, but it's just, I'm speechless when people react that way.
Sure. I know as a writer, I often go back and read my work and I'm like, I wrote that?
No, it is that thing where I'm, you know, I was in a lot of that, in the most poignant scene in that film, I sat there trying to embody my dad. Like, what would he say? What do I need to hear from my ancestors, my community, my people? And so when I hear those things back, it's like, that's not me writing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it very much can feel separated, especially when time passes.
Sure.
You know, there's a removal, I think, that happens, and I think that's a little bit of a gift, because then we can see the reflection back, right? Of like what you were getting out of it, why we needed to tell that story.
You almost become the audience at that point. Own creation.
Yeah, certainly.
Where can people watch it?
Right now, it's not available for streaming. I'm working on trying to find a platform where it can go. And if and when that is updated, that'll be on my website, just MorningStarAngeline.com. And
what are some other places that people can follow you that are watching us?
Sure. I have, the only one that I have is basically Instagram. And that one's just MorningStar Angeline X. And that's pretty much it. I'm trying to simplify my social media presence life, but I try to keep everything really updated on those.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I know you're so busy. You're going to be filming next week, so
yeah.
So that's the reason that we're here. It's actually Sunday, not Wednesday, and so we're getting this interview in now because she's going to be on set next week, and this was the only time we could make it happen. But
yeah.
I felt like our collectors and our viewers needed to know who was wearing the jewelry.
Yeah.
And again, storytelling. I wanted you to be able to share your story with the people that are watching, because it's one thing to have like a beautiful piece of jewelry and to know about the nausea and everything, but there's always such a deeper context.
Yeah.
And in that deeper truth, I think it takes something from being just a piece of jewelry and it becomes something more sacred, more personal, because you realize how connected something as simple as a pendant is to everything around you and everybody around you.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish in these bi-monthly Wednesday deep dive discussions, is giving that deeper context.
Yeah.
Whether people are buying the jewelry or just viewing it, I want them to know who we are here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, and why we create anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
What makes us tick.
Yeah. Right.
And it's such a small community that we all end up kind of being in touch with each other in some way. So
Yep.
it's really cyclical.
I know. I love it for that reason. That's why I
So.
like it here.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you,
for having
Virtual
me.
Hug.
Thank you.
I can't wait to watch you on Netflix.
Oh, so excited.
I know a few people working on that project, and it sounds like it's really top notch.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it too.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.